Has your opinion of Kyle Shanahan gone up, gone down, or remained the same through the first 4 games of this season? Maverick, why don't you start us off?
I think Shanahan, my opinion of him is pretty much the same as it was the last couple of years. I think he's a very good play caller. He's a great schemer, but sometimes he gets in his own head and gets away from the run a little too much. And I think the 49ers are a very hard team to beat when they pound the rock and don't abandon the run, even though last week McKinnon had more yards after contact than overall yards. I still think they should have stuck with the run, and I think they'll do that this week, and people will be back on Shanahan's side.
I'm at the same level with Shanahan. 2-2 losses, lost two games this year that they had no business losing. But if you look at it from the coaching perspective, he drew up plays to win the game. The players didn't execute. So how much are you going to put that on Kyle Shanahan when Jimmy Garoppolo underthrows Kendrick Bourne in the end zone? That probably would have won them the game at that point. As same thing with the Eagles. Nick Mullins throwing right at the linebacker, as well as turning over the ball in field goal range. I can't blame Shanahan for players not executing.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that Shanahan's at the same levels that I've always thought he was, and quite honestly, I've never really thought a whole lot of Kyle Shanahan from the time they hired him. You look at his history. He came to the 49ers off of 9 seasons as a coordinator. He'd only had 3 winning seasons. All of them were one-offs. One of those winning seasons was in Houston when he was the de facto offensive coordinator with Kubiak. You know, they had one okay season in Washington, crash and burn the next year. You know, then he goes to Atlanta and he becomes an offensive wizard when he takes over a team that has Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. Matt Ryan, by that point, had already been a 3-time Pro Bowler. Yep. So it's not like there was a whole lot going on there. The Falcons, before Shanahan got there, 2 seasons, you know, they were a playoff team before he got there. I know they had a couple of bad years there at the end of the Mike Smith era, but they already had the QB in place. They already had the playmakers in place. He just kind of stepped in. So what we've seen from him so far in his 49ers tenure is what he's been throughout his entire career.
And Jack's right. You know, I felt the same way as Jack when they hired him and through the first two years of his tenure here. And then last year was so impressive. I felt like I needed to eat a lot of my words, and I felt like I needed to give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe as a 40-year-old coach, he was growing and improving. But then this year, I feel like Jack, like we're seeing a lot of the same stuff that we've seen through Shanahan throughout his entire career. And he's very good. But as Jack pointed out, he seems like he can't sustain success. He hasn't had back-to-back seasons with an upper echelon offense ever. And maybe it's because he keeps bouncing around teams, but he's been a little bit of a mercenary in the league. And now it's like, I mean, he has excuses for losing to the Eagles and Arizona Cardinals, but I don't know. It seems like right now he's still more of a coordinator. And what you point to, what makes him great is his play calls, his play designs, his offense. But head coaching wise, he's deficient in game management. He's deficient when at the end of the game, when there's pressure on. I think the best thing he does as a head coach is the group of position coaches he's assembled, because the team really does develop players well, and he gets credit for that. But in terms of his in-game management as a head coach, he's not one of the best in the league. And I feel like maybe that my opinion hasn't come down in that sense. It's just cemented itself that maybe he's not going to improve there. I don't know.
I'll say this is, as far as Matt Ryan being already established as a 3-time Pro Bowler, okay, well, who is really that good of an offensive coordinator or head coach when they don't have a good quarterback? That's going to be everybody in the league, every play caller, every head coach. If you don't have at least a mid-tier quarterback, the season's going to be 8-8 at best. You may have one fluky year, but no one's really going to have success if you don't have at least a mid-tier quarterback.
Well, let's see what he does with Garoppolo this year. I mean, he's 1-1 with Garoppolo, and now he's coming back essentially, hopefully this week, and we'll see if Garoppolo can continue to win or if that was short-lived. We'll see. I think he's going to continue to win.
And let's
move
really
on.
Hit on it, Grant, though, real quick. You know, on the game management piece, that's really where it comes down to. He struggles really bad at the end of games.
Yep.
This goes back. You look back, and this is going back 2018. They're playing against the Packers. End of the game.
Yeah.
2nd and 3. You call a pass. You end up having to punt the ball back to Rodgers, and you're giving them a minute and a half instead of running the ball on 2nd and 3, burning some clock down. You're already in field goal position at that point. You saw it again on Sunday night. The end of the game, there's no reason to be kicking an onside kick right there. You have 3 timeouts at your disposal. Worst case scenario, if you don't think the guys are going to return it, kick the ball down the field out of bounds. Give them the ball on the 40. It's just instead of getting them on their side of the field, instead of on your side of the field and backing you up.
With the game management thing, I think part of it with Shanahan is that his whole scheme is built on run plays looking exactly like play action plays and fooling the defense and being able to create big plays through the air that way. And that works in the first quarter. I mean, on 1st and 10 in the first quarter, when the game's tied, the defense has to honor both of that, and you can really mess with them. But as the game goes on, the game situation, the time on the clock, the score, all those things kind of dictate what you have to do. If you're up big in the second half of the Super Bowl, you got to run. The defense knows you got to run. They load up to stop the run, and you still have to run it. But what Kyle does is, I'm going to trick him. I'm going to pass. And that gets him into trouble because it's like, it's great to be able to trick people in the first quarter, but in the fourth quarter, you kind of have to do what you have to do to seal the game. And he hasn't shown – that's only part of the game management stuff. The other stuff is like when he calls the timeouts, when he decides to do the 2-minute drill, when he decides to not do the 2-minute drill, things like that. It's almost like he loses his aggression and confidence in those areas, in those moments.
I'm going to just rebuttal one more time.
Sure.
We could always nitpick play calling.
Yes.
In certain situations, we can always do that when it does not succeed, always.
Mm-hmm.
But with that 2018 Packer game, if they had anybody covering Devontae Adams, maybe not named Greg Maben, covering that guy, they come out of that game with a victory. It was just way too easy as far as Green Bay offense.
That's why you run the ball. Kill the time. It doesn't matter who the guy is.
And that's the thing. Like Shanahan always has an excuse when he loses. He's like, "Hey, look, the guy was open. He should have executed. I gave him the play." And it's like what great coaches do is they just find a way to win. They just find a way to win, and usually they win more than they lose. And with Shanahan, despite all his great ideas, he still hasn't shown that he's the kind of head coach who wins more than he loses. Right now, he's a guy with 1 winning season, and we assume this will be number 2, but we don't know that. This could be an 8-8 year. And it could be because of injuries, but every team has excuses. Anyway, we're only 4 games into this season. It's an interesting topic to think about and discuss, but we really don't know. It's a small sample size.